taking control of cryptocurrency, and more with Glenn Fleishman. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Text Expander by Smile, the makers of world-class software. Visit textexpander.com/podcast to learn more and download your free demo. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're wrapping up our conversations with Glenn Fleishman, the Take Control author who has written a whole lot of new books and updated even more books during lockdown. This time we touch on his cryptocurrency book, catch up with him on some of the other activities outside of being a Take Control author, and a whole lot more. Let's go right back and hear from Glenn.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a chapter on it in the Mac security book because Macs, it's a lot easier to install something unintentionally or be guided through installing something malicious. So I have, a whole chapter in there about kind of malware and antivirus and the other, the gatekeeper controls, because I think that's important to learn. It's useful for yourself, but it's also important to learn the kinds of scams and things that might afflict family members and people because they'll maybe, if you're the smartest Mac person or the most informed Mac person, Apple person in your group, you're the one everyone's going to ask. So some of my books are, here's what you need to know to help other people because they're going to ask you. That comes up for, I should point out, there's a new feature it's in the Apple ID book that I document it fully. But Apple now is, this is a little confusing, but I think it relates to this sort of security issue is, there are 4 different kinds of account recovery now 3 and 1 coming for your Apple ID. And because Apple ID kind of ties us through all our systems, Apple introduced this recovery key option, or reintroduced, I should say, for Apple ID last year, and they did not explain it very well. And I contacted the company and I wrote about it, couldn't figure it out. And then recently I revisited it and they've slightly improved the explanation. So now I can recommend it for people in specific situations, but it's kind of like an anti-hijacking tool. So if you have normal recovery enabled for your Apple ID, you can go through a process if you can't log in, and human beings at Apple review things you send, and it takes a few days, and it's a timed process. You might have to give them your credit card number that you used with your Apple ID so they can validate it and do a charge authorization to check that it's legitimate. If you turn on recovery key for this account recovery option for your Apple ID, then you only need the recovery key, and I believe it's a phone number linked to your Apple ID to reset your account, reset your password, or regain access if your account was locked by Apple for some reason for security purposes. And Apple can no longer help you, but you no longer have to wait. So the problem is if you lose your recovery key, your account is unrecoverable forever. But before, it was unclear what circumstances you would wind up using the recovery key in, and now I've documented those. So that's one set of choices. And then Apple's also just added, you may have seen this, Icloud Data Recovery Service, which is a hilarious name. You can appoint trusted contacts who, in the event you can't log into your Apple ID account, Apple can text them a code that lets you unlock your account. And it gains you access to stuff that's stored at iCloud.com. It won't unlock your devices, so your devices could still be locked up, but you wouldn't lose access to your Apple ID. And then they've also are about to add digital legacy, which they announced at WWDC earlier this year, and it looks like it might be coming in 15.1, but it's a way of essentially appointing executors for your iCloud account. So when you pass on, these people will have the ability to continue to access data in your iCloud account, where before, Apple's stated policy in their terms and services was when you die, you can no longer have an Apple ID account. And if they discover you've died, they'll delete it. So that's a big 180 on that. So these are other things. I think they relate more to like account security, because you could get locked out, and also sort of integrity and privacy, as you have to think about who you might want to give permission and how you store this data. But it's kind of, I think, exciting updates in Apple ID management and access that have been added throughout. Well, I should say they're in iOS and iPad OS. Monterey will have iCloud data recovery, and the digital legacy will be coming to all 3 operating systems as well. The back-end support you need to manage it.
The digital legacy thing is, that's been needed for a while, and I'm glad they figured out a way to do it. Somebody might say, gee, losing control my Apple ID is not that big a deal. Well, yeah, it is a big deal because that controls your access to your Apple Care. And how about all the movies and all the music you might have
Yeah.
purchased and all those things?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you come to realize that you've got a nice little piece of change sitting in there in digital assets that if you lose it, well, then it's gone and you have to start to rebuy. And who wants to do that?
That's
So
exactly it. And I'm glad they added it. And I'm glad that, I think it's probably one of the most straightforward features I've ever seen Apple add. So like iCloud, again, this name cracks me up. iCloud Data Recovery Service is such a Microsofty name. I like, it's almost should be like, recover with your friends or something. It should have an easier name. But when you go into the service, it's like, okay, here's what it's about. Click here and you can add trusted contacts, only add people you really trust. Here's exactly the data that they would help you get access to. And here's what they can't. And click here and invite them. And then you're done. And it's just this little, very nicely presented, well laid out, well thought out process. And it's the kind of the model of how you would want a new feature to appear. And it looks like Digital Legacy, I think, is going to work from what I can tell, because they've put some pieces of it up that aren't live, but there's like a website you can go to at apple.com. That's their Digital Legacy website. You just can't do anything there yet. And it's, and there's like some support documents linked to that are not published yet, but you can find the links. So it's almost ready to go, but it'll be pretty much the same thing. So it's not this legal process. You don't have to spend, 5 hours or get notarization. And it's not a complicated thing where you'll look at it and be confused and, give up on it. It looks like, I think they've thought these out really well for the average person, and that's why I was thinking about the things you learn so you can help other people. Like the iCloud Data Recovery Service, I think anybody with goodwill should offer to be added by any relative or friend or person who they feel like doesn't have the computer chops, might get themselves in this situation, or anybody reaches out and says, hey, can you be one of my trusted contacts? I've been locked out of my Apple ID before. It was a pain. You go, oh yeah, absolutely. And then that's just a thing that you can do for people that doesn't involve, 15 hours of your time. Again, it's just, you get a code and you give them the code and they can unlock their account.
Yeah. Glenn, one thing before we leave this, I want to make sure we know, are those options mutually exclusive? Or can you implement them all? Can I designate you for a digital legacy and Joe for, my friend that has my key, and let's see, I forget now what the other one was.
It's interesting. It's personal. It's what I would say is there are two choices for account recovery that are essentially personal. That's recovery key, sort of Apple human-based recovery. So that's one layer, but that's about you and stuff There's The second layer is while I'm alive, people who can help me. And the third is after I'm gone, people can have access. So it's interesting because they've kind of given you a life cycle and a friend circle for account access. And I think that's kind of neat too. It's a different way from thinking than Apple usually does. So if you choose the recovery key, that's something you would possess and keep private because it would give you complete access to your account. The sort of friends recovery is iCloud Data Recovery Service is, I need help getting into my Apple ID, but it only unlocks stuff that's synced and available at iCloud.com. It doesn't give you access to devices. And then the digital legacy is after I'm gone, I've appointed people. But yeah, you can, for the sort of the friends recovery and the digital legacy, the same person can be in those groups. They don't have to be the same set of people, but the same people can be in both those groups.
Right. And I didn't even think to mention that when we're talking about the iCloud part, that's where all your photos are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's maybe even more important than any money you've spent in the iTunes or app stores.
Because right. So that first tier, like if you lose access to your Apple ID account, you lose purchases, you lose your iCloud content, you lose anything associated, your Apple Care record, like everything, right? And then the next level down is like you lose access to iCloud is kind of like it's photos, contacts, calendar entries, like anything you don't have synced locally. There's going to be unique content or something like that. Like you could have all your devices stolen, and you need to be able to set up a new account practically. So some stuff that's only in devices that's end-to-end synchronized, like iCloud Keychain, those won't be recoverable if you don't have one of your devices, but you won't lose everything. You'll have everything that's synced through iCloud.com you would be able to recover.
I want to go off script for a second and ask you one.
Yeah.
There's only one question that I want to ask you, and then I'll let you answer it however you want. Take control of cryptocurrency. Okay.
Yeah.
Who is this book for? Is it for someone that needs it explained? Do you give investment advice? Who should look at that book hard?
Well, that's a great question, because I try to market it as, if you don't want to invest in cryptocurrency and everyone's telling you to, this book will help you understand why you don't want to invest in it. So
Okay.
it's not a don't. I've actually talked to Joe about maybe we should. So I started writing the book in the spring when Bitcoin was at $60,000 a piece. And I wasn't writing it because like, oh, this is a good investment, but I thought there's so much interest in it. People are asking me all the time about it. I should just write a book because I know a fair amount and I'll learn the rest and I'll synthesize it. And then I can say, here's everything you need to know. If you're thinking about investing or you don't want to, and you want to know why you shouldn't, like you think it's a scam or you think it's makes no sense, but you want to be able to explain it to yourself and maybe other people. So I started from that standpoint. Then what happened, of course, is Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other cryptocurrencies like fell by 50%, and people were less interested in the answers because they weren't looking to invest. People lost money, whatever. So I would say this book is skeptical about the current utility of cryptocurrency. I don't offer investment advice, but I give you all the tools to understand how it works, because I do strongly believe that cryptocurrency will be an important part of the economy in the future. But I don't think speculative currencies or currency stored value systems that are tied to nothing but themselves, like Bitcoin, that have no inherent value, I don't think those are going to be very important. I think those are always going to be a sideline. I could be wrong, but I think it has never been proven to me that there's the stability you need for a currency. It's not even like buying gold. It's more like buying comic books, right? Comic books are worth what people want to pay for them. And if people suddenly get uninterested in comic books, then they're worth less, right? And that's actually a physical thing, but its value is completely dependent on interest. So, you buy gold has had some preservation of value over time, even though it's volatile at times. But so, so I think of this as a book where you think, I don't think I want to invest in cryptocurrency. Why? And this book answers the question. But if you did want to invest in it, I think the book would also give you enough tools to know where to look next. So it would tell you all the basics and fundamentals so you would understand it and make informed judgments. Now, I've been joking with Joe that I should do a second edition like next year that's explicitly like, take control of not cryptocurrency. It would be like, it's a terrible idea and you shouldn't just take a strong advocacy stand. But I'll tell you the funniest thing, Chuck, is I bought about $300 worth of cryptocurrency early this year in order to have a little bit of a stake. And I needed to have some stuff to trade because I was using the tools, and it wasn't all bought at $300. Well, here's the funny part. Recently I was like, oh, I should just liquidate that. I don't really want to hold it. And it was sort of experimental. I wonder how it did. I made $100 in cryptocurrency. So I made a 30% return, and I'm like, oh no. And so I'm never going to get involved in it again. But I'm the worst example. It's like I put $300 in, I got $400 out. Damn it. Did I just, because I bought it at different times. Oh yeah. If I'd gone even, I would have been happy, but like, I am not a lesson to draw from. The lesson from that isn't, oh, I should have put $1 million in, as if I had $1 million. The lesson is it's extremely volatile. And I didn't know until I did meticulous accounting even how much I'd made or lost in the process of investing and divesting. So
this edition of MacVoices is supported by Smile, the makers of Text Expander, my most used productivity utility. Smile has just released Text Expander 7 with a new look, improved experience, and better accessibility. Not only is Text Expander my most used utility, but these new improvements will make it even more users' most used utility. The new user interface delivers a more unified user experience. Updates to snippet suggestions means the Text Expander is even better at helping you identify what you type frequently and suggesting that a snippet should be in your future. Updated conflict management, upgraded search results, and a whole lot more make Text Expander 7 the best text expander yet. If you're not using Text Expander, it's way past time. Visit textexpander.com/podcast right now to sign up for a free trial. You will be up and running in a few minutes, and soon you will wonder how you ever did without Text Expander. That's Text Expander 7 from Smile, the makers of world-class software, at textexpander.com/podcast. Thanks to Smile for being the longest running sponsor of MacVoices. Well, I had to ask simply because I've had people ask me about it too, and what really kind of when it really caught my attention is when I went to the grocery store and I see one of those Coinstar machines, and it says I
Oh
can get
yeah.
my coins back in
Oh my God.
cryptocurrency, and it's like, okay,
No.
so if well, but you need to understand it. If you want to play with it, go and
Yeah,
it's no worse than
exactly.
Vegas. Throw a couple $100 in and
Yeah,
play with it, but recognize that you could lose it tomorrow, or you
that's
maybe
great.
make a 30% return. But
I mean, I think
it,
there's a fundamental
it's
thing at this point is there is kind of a baseline in many cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and the major ones is that there's enough people who put enough stake in it. It's Bitcoin is not going to go down to zero. And I shouldn't say that. Bitcoin could go down to zero if there was a major technical flaw or a complete technical destruction of the system because the system relies on peers participating. Bitcoin is like a consensual participation peer-to-peer networking system with all these nodes that talk to each other and exchange information, and then all these miners who actually put in the computational power and they feed it into these nodes. So there are scenarios in which Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrencies could absolutely fail because they're reliant on these underpinnings. But in it's very unlikely that would happen. It's Bitcoin could be worth a lot less. It could be worth a lot more. It's unlikely to go to zero. So you couldn't be totally wiped out, but you can have 90% of your investment wiped out, or maybe 95%, or you could make 100% return. But you're right. It's like Vegas. Like, what's the difference between Bitcoin if you're looking at it as an investment? So the thing I think I'm most hip on though is stable coins, not the existing ones either. These are coins that are pegged to real world currency, and they use crypto coin as a method of providing an easy exchange, like international or cross boundaries. And people have talked about stable coins as being a way, like if the US government were to release a US dollar coin and a dollar of crypto US dollar and real US dollar were always redeemable for $1, right? You can take one out. It could be a far cheaper way to say, there's a, multi $100 billion remittance system globally as migrant workers, people leave one country for another or inside a country, send money back home. It's a massive, massive amount of money. And the percentage that's taken from people, the World Bank and the United Nations have been working diligently for years to reduce it. And it has gone down several percentage points in the last, I think 15 years, but it's still, a huge amount of money is taken from people who are giving cash so that people at the other end can get cash out. And there's a fundamental unfairness in the banking system that allows this to happen. So what I'm passionate about is, could you have a totally stable cryptocurrency system that's backed cryptographically for security and safety, that is not that doesn't have the volatility and has a high utility? And I think, yeah, but at the same time, like China wants to introduce a digital renminbi or yuan because it wants to know exactly who's spending every cent where, and they think a digital currency will give them the ability to do that. So, there's a flip side to all of this.
Yeah. Well, and it's why you need to, even if you're not thinking seriously about even playing with it, you need to understand why it's important in today's world. And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to ask about the cryptocurrency book, because it just, there's so many articles out there, and usually after about the third paragraph, your head starts to swim. And knowing how
Oh my
you
gosh.
write
Yeah.
and everything, I know that this has got to be a book that helps me make a lot more sense of it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I try to use some, real world metaphors for something that's hard to relate to. And there's, obviously a lot of cryptography in it. And my level of understanding the cryptography is still, several floors down from the people who are actually cryptologists and work with it. But I think I have a good working knowledge of the major systems now. And, so the book, I get into all the environmental issues as well, and the potential for change, reduction in environmental harm. But yeah, I think it's really written for somebody just like you. It's written for me, or my friends too. Like, what is this? What is this? How does it work? And does it make any sense? And the answer is it makes sense from a mathematical standpoint. It makes sense when you understand why people want to have a system that's decoupled from trust. They want to have math replace trust in another person. They want everything that's done to be verifiable and uncounterfeitable. But the problem is with something like Bitcoin is that it just hasn't played out that way because the majority of mining capacity, the people actually producing the new currency and turning transactions into immutable parts of the blockchain so that they're recorded forever and can't be changed, right? The folks doing mining control enough of the system now, and most of the currencies, and some they control practically all of it, that you have to trust those people. Anybody who has majority or can produce a cabal or a consortium that has majority control over the capacity of making transactions permanent in a system control the currency. And that is a fundamental thing that the initial Bitcoin paper described a world in which that wouldn't be the case. And what's happened is we have a world where that is. So, if we were in a perfect world and there was nobody could ever amass more than 5 or 10% control of any currency's transaction production, like putting them into permanent records, then maybe we'd have a whole different attitude. It'd be much less volatile too.
It's whenever we get those pesky humans involved that things, get crazy. So
I know. Bitcoin is trying to route around human beings, and it doesn't work because human beings are always involved.
we are a persistent bunch, aren't we? Okay, so I'm going to run down the roster again. Take control of Find My and AirTags. Take control of iOS and iPadOS privacy and security. Take control of your Apple ID 3rd edition. Take control of securing your Mac. Take control of M-Series Mac. Take control of cryptocurrency.
Update coming soon.
Oh, update coming soon.
M-Series Mac coming soon.
Okay, good. Thank you. Take control of cryptocurrency and take control of Zoom 2nd edition. Folks, if you have any interest in any of these topics, takecontrolbooks.com is where you go to get them. And I'm not even going to try to go through prices and everything because there are all kind of bundles and discounts and upgrades. So just visit takecontrolbooks.com, check them out. Even at retail price, these are great values because they cover each of those topics in depth in a way that you can understand, and especially with Glenn writing them.
And I'll tell you, I know sometimes we talk about my other stuff, and I thought you might enjoy something I did this weekend. Is I got together with some other. I am not a trained printing historian. I've taught myself, on the streets, all my type and printing history stuff, and I've become friends with a lot of people who are actually the bona fide, they have PhDs and teach and have access to major collections. And so that's been fun. It's a great and very welcoming community. This kind of early book and print history world. And so we had something called a flong party a few days ago, which you can find on YouTube, the replay of it. And I got together with a few other people, and we'll probably do it again with another group, where there's a piece of printing history I think I've mentioned. I think you will love this. If you can, is it in focus? I can't tell.
Yeah, it's at Peanuts. It's
a peanut strip from the 1970s. And what it is this is called flong, F-L-O-N-G. And what flong is, and this is a 4-color separation for those who remember the printing days. There's 4 pieces of what seems like cardboard, each of which is a separate color. And so flong was the thing that was a way that newspapers got syndicated comics. These are cast in metal, and then they look something like this. Here's a Doonesbury strip from the 1970s. They'd get the piece of paper molding, then they'd cast it in metal, then they would lock it up in a page of type. Then they would make another paper mold from that, cast that in a semicircle, and put that on a newspaper press. It's an amazing process. But these flongs, or also called mats or matrices, because they were molds, they've mostly been discarded because they had no real value. And anyway, there's enough of them out there. I've been collecting limited examples. I do not have a big basement, and I'm not trying to amass a collection, but I've been collecting things like full pages of newspapers. I have a newspaper from, pages from 1947, and they used to distribute clip art. We always got clip art when you're doing layouts of things. Clip art was distributed as flongs, and you'd cut it up and you'd cast it in metal and you'd put it in metal with the rest of your page. And that would be part of your newspaper page. You're like, oh, of course, they had clip art before there were photostats and digital files. And anyway, so a bunch of us got together and we shared our flong. Everyone had very interesting kinds. One person has reproduced the process. It requires a lot of different machines to make it, and none of those really exist anymore. And he's figured out a way to do it. And anyway, if you go and search on flong and Glenn Fleishman and show and tell, perhaps on YouTube, you'll find it. But we had a good time, and this is part of my printing history background, some of which you'll see on walls behind me, some examples.
Very cool, Glenn. Very cool. This is why you want to read books that are written by Glenn Fleishman, because he just has this insatiable curiosity about everything. And I love it. I love it. I've learned so much from you. and even things that I'm really not that interested in, I still learn them from you
Mhm.
because they're in there, and it's you've there's something as simple as, I mean, sure, yeah, who didn't read Peanuts in the '70s, and who didn't read Doonesbury, and you just think, okay, it's a comic, you never appreciate what goes into getting that to you.
And here's the great thing is because we live in the future, I went on eBay and I bought a copy of that comic in from 1977. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle. I wanted a
Wow.
print version of it, and you can find it online, but it's perfect. I wanted to see how it was printed. So you just go on eBay and it's like, oh, where is this? Can I get this page? Like, sure, someone just has it. And they sell it to you for a few dollars. It's just it's a weird economy where we think of ourselves as very digital. And I could instantly bring up the digital version, but atoms are also pretty easy to get these days too. A lot of old atoms.
Okay, there's a new T-shirt. Atoms are pretty easy to get.
It's
That's
true.
good.
This is my antidote to cryptocurrency is buying a 1977 printed newspaper page of peanuts. That's it.
The fact that you need an antidote to cryptocurrency says something, Glenn.
I was getting cryptocurrency poisoning. It's like kryptonite poisoning, just only less severe.
Hey, you've been very generous with your time as always. Thank you so much. Thank you for the books,
Oh
and thank
gosh,
you
such a pleasure.
for everything. This is always a blast. You're always welcome. The biggest trick for us is to get our scheduling together, because we never have any
Well,
trouble talking about things.
I'll have some more time coming up since I've written my 9 books or whatever. I think like I said, I have 9 books to take control, and some of them update on Apple's schedule and some others. Still coming are take control of Wi-Fi networking and security, and take control of home security cameras. And then, like I said, the M series MacBook is coming out soon. Now that we know what Apple's shipping, I'll be updating it for that and any other Monterey changes. So that'll be coming out. But yeah, it's just, it's a hoot, and I love it. And I love the feedback, as everyone watching, I love your feedback. This is what makes me do it. When people write and say, this helped me, or that tip, I've been looking for the answer and you had it. It's like, then I'm just, I'm good for another year.
Okay, well, first of all, you forgot to take control of Flong. I'm sure that's coming along here somewhere.
It's good. I'm trying to. It's all all around me. You can't see it, but I'm surrounded by old wood pulp molds. But they're fascinating.
So, if people do want to get in touch with you, what are the best ways? Where can you be found?
Oh, that's a great question. Twitter is often the best because you can just at me there. It's at Glenn F, GLENNF, like Frank. And it's not that I don't give out my email address, but I think it may be better to go to, if you have Mac or iOS questions, go to macworld.com and look for the Mac 911 column, because then that goes into a special queue that I will see, so it won't get lost in spam or get lost in the flood of other stuff. And then I can answer it you can tell me if it's a Mac question or iOS question for Macworld, or if you're just trying to reach me, then I am sure to see it. If you hunt hard enough, some people do find my actual email address, but then again, it gets lost in the maelstrom. So it's a little, not always as useful.
Glenn, thank you so much. It's great to see you. I look forward to our next conversation, wherever we can squeeze it in.
Oh, it's great. Thank you so much for having me on, Chuck. It's always great to talk to you.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Once again, take control books for all the books that I mentioned that Glenn wrote, plus all the other great take control authors. These are the books you want if you're trying to learn how to do things, or want to understand them, or want to definitely understand why not to invest in cryptocurrency. Until the next time, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.